It was August 6, 1945. At 8:15 in the morning, the sky over Hiroshima was clear, a bright, almost tender blue. Children were walking to school. Office workers were unlocking their doors. The river shimmered in the morning sun. And then, in less than a heartbeat, the light changed. A single flash tore through the sky, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything humanity had ever created. For a fraction of a second, there was no sound, only a blinding white void. And then, the city was gone. In one moment, 70,000 lives were erased. 3 days later, Nagasaki followed. The world had entered a new age, the age where humanity gained the power to destroy itself. They called it victory. They called it peace. They said it ended the war. But behind those words lies the most haunting question of the 20th century. Was it necessary? And deeper still, what does morality mean when death is measured by efficiency? The decision to drop the atomic bomb wasn't made in a moment of rage or chaos. It was made in calm, orderly rooms filled with papers, maps, and the low hum of air conditioners. Men discussed the geometry of destruction like accountants discussing costs. They spoke of strategy, not of screams. For months before Hiroshima, the war had already been lost for Japan. Its cities were firebombed into ash. Civilians had become targets long before the atom was split. In Tokyo, 100,000 people died in a single night, consumed by firestorms. And yet, the bomb was different. It wasn't just another weapon. It was a statement to the world, to history, and to the future that was coming. It was science made divine and monstrous in the same breath. Some would later argue it saved lives, that an invasion of Japan would have cost millions more. Others would whisper that it was never about Japan at all, but about sending a message to another emerging power, the Soviet Union. Between these justifications lies a chasm of moral divide. Can one massacre be forgiven if it prevents another? Can destruction ever be ethical when its victims are nameless civilians? And who decides what necessity looks like when power itself becomes godlike? In the ruins of Hiroshima, a shadow was burned into stone, the silhouette of a person who once stood by a wall. Their body vanished, but their outline remained, as if history itself refused to let the world forget. Scientists who built the bomb wept when they saw what it did. Some defended their creation, others broke. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who gave birth to the weapon, famously recalled a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." He wasn't boasting, he was confessing. In Washington, the reports were clinical, target achieved, estimated casualties confirmed. But in Hiroshima, the streets were silent except for the moans of the dying, the rivers filled with bodies. Survivors staggered like ghosts, their skin melted, their eyes searching for water, for help, for meaning. They called this the new dawn of peace. But peace built on silence is only the absence of sound, not the absence of suffering. When Nagasaki was chosen 3 days later, there was no pause, no reconsideration. The mechanism of history had already turned. At 11:02 a.m., another city turned to dust. There are those who argue that war is by nature immoral, that no weapon can be judged outside its context. But Hiroshima and Nagasaki weren't just acts of war. They were the introduction of a new principle, that humanity could be divided into those who use such power and those who must endure it. The atomic bomb didn't end a war. It began an era, one where fear replaced faith, where science replaced mercy, and where morality became negotiable. In the years that followed, nations built thousands of bombs, each one stronger, cleaner, faster. The weapon that leveled Hiroshima was considered primitive just a decade later, an infant in a family of perfected annihilation. Diplomats called it deterrence. Philosophers called it madness. The world called it balance. The irony is cruel. The weapon that destroyed 2 cities may have also prevented others from being used again. Fear became the foundation of peace. Mutual destruction became the logic of stability. But the ghosts of Hiroshima never vanished. They walk through the decades, silent reminders that even a necessary evil is still evil. Every August, the survivors, the hibakusha, gather to tell their stories. They don't speak of anger. They speak of warning. Their message is simple. Humanity cannot survive another lesson like this. And yet, the world listens, and then it forgets. Each generation grows more distant from the fire. The photographs turn sepia, the voices fade. Politicians still talk of nuclear options. Scientists still dream of control. Armies still train for the unthinkable. It's easy to study Hiroshima as history. It is much harder to feel it as a matter of conscience. The moral debate endures, not because there's no answer, but because no answer can ever feel sufficient. If the bomb truly ended the war, was that mercy or murder? If it saved lives, whose lives counted more? There are no equations for this kind of arithmetic. The world rebuilt. Japan rose from the ashes, turning pain into discipline, destruction into innovation. But beneath every skyscraper in Hiroshima lies the memory of that single morning, when civilization decided that speed mattered more than sorrow. The scientists called it progress. The generals called it victory. But history, quiet, patient, and merciless, still whispers another word: tragedy. The bomb wasn't just dropped on Japan, it was dropped on humanity's idea of itself. Before Hiroshima, war was horror. After Hiroshima, it became a calculation. Before Hiroshima, there was morality. After Hiroshima, there was justification. In the ruins of that city, the line between defense and domination, between necessity and cruelty, between good and evil, all of it turned to ash. Oppenheimer once said years later that physicists had known sin. It was the first time science admitted guilt, not for a failure, but for its success. In the end, perhaps the real question isn't whether the bomb was necessary, but whether we deserved to survive it. The cities were rebuilt, the world moved on, and the bomb became a relic, admired in museums, replicated in laboratories, hidden in silos. Yet every button, every code, every weapon that exists today carries the echo of that first flash in 1945. If morality is the conscience of civilization, Hiroshima is its scar. A reminder that technology without empathy isn't progress. It's regression wrapped in brilliance. And so the debate continues, decades later, between historians, generals, and citizens who have never known war. They argue about strategy, necessity, inevitability. But the stones of Hiroshima do not argue. They only remember. Somewhere deep beneath the weight of history lies the simplest truth. That power, once justified, becomes addictive. That fear, once accepted, becomes normal. And that moral compromise, once made, never ends where it begins. The light that rose over Hiroshima was not just a weapon, it was a mirror. It showed humanity its true reflection, capable of creation beyond imagination and destruction beyond comprehension. And as long as that reflection remains unexamined, the bomb will never truly belong to the past, because Hiroshima was never just a city destroyed. It was a question, one that every generation must answer for itself. When we claim to end war in the name of peace, what kind of peace are we actually creating? Thank you for watching. If this story made you think, please consider subscribing and sharing this video. It's by remembering these moments that we can hope to build a better future.